What is mad? No, I already done that. What is oneness? I was just watching a movie, or I started to watch it. It's called what's it called? I think I want to change it like this. I don't really know, but so that when I'm talking, right? I don't really know how loud this is because I'm actually, I'm streaming now at the same time. So I've never done that. So that's like first experience, right? I'm also not really sure how I feel about all this kind of streaming. Oh yeah, the movie. It's a bit bloody, but I like the story so far. It's called The Spine of Night. All right. So what is oneness? Oneness, and it's like singularity, right? I get to this point where I've said so much already, and I've said that, even saying that is already repetition. So, everything's kind of repetition. And I've also said that already. It's like from the movie Avatar, it's like field stripping a weapon, right? So you just continue to do it and to do it and to do it until it becomes, I'm like obsessively checking. Yeah, until it becomes habit. And so for me talking, for instance, it kind of became habit. I sit down and then I talk. And I talk about what I feel like. So I don't have a script. I just have an idea of I want to make a recording about oneness. And then I basically sit around and wait until I also feel like making that recording. And that's usually a very spontaneous moment. So I first look for things to say, and then suddenly, I have to fill myself with all kinds of insights and stuff. And then suddenly it's like, okay, now go. Now make a recording, and then, really, now? Okay, yeah, just do it. So if you talk about what is oneness, well, most of all, it's a feeling. Oneness is a feeling. And you will realize that, because I do watch content from other people, or I watch people in interviews, and I'm trying to pick up whether they actually know what they're talking about because they have a feeling connected to the words that they're saying, or whether they're just repeating stuff they've read or other people said to them. Because I never talk about things I haven't, I can scratch the usually. I never talk about anything I'm uncertain about. And when I do, I say that. And the vast majority of people that I meet, they will read something and then they go on, right? They walk around and then they pretend like they know what they're talking about. Right, so you listen to what I say about oneness now, and then you go around and say, well, oneness is this. Yeah, but if I would be standing in front of you, and you would try to sell oneness to me, I could pretty easily, topple you over. Because it would be fairly simple to tell whether you're lying or not, because I know what I'm talking about if I say, this is to me what oneness feels like. And from that feeling, I can try to understand it, and I can try to put that into words, which is almost impossible. So when I talk to you about oneness, I always have to talk about how did I feel when I think I've experienced oneness. Yeah. So, to me, oneness is kind of when all boundaries dissolve. All the boundaries that we usually have, all kinds of concepts, all kinds of ideas and opinions and thoughts. This is how I am, this is how the world is. There's a lot of judgment usually involved. There's a lot of, this is how it's supposed to be or how it should be. And then we get to this point sometimes where we feel like everything's perfect. And suddenly we don't have any needs. Suddenly we don't suffer. It's just like, wow. Whoa, this is how I can feel? Yeah, you can feel like this. And most people, they make such experiences when they are taking psychedelics. And then they say, oh, wow, that's what the psychedelic did. No, the psychedelic opened the door. But that's like a temporary pass, right? The psychedelic allows you temporarily to experience what oneness feels like. So the gift of the psychedelic substance is an experience that gives you something to work towards. And that is oneness. Now, the problem often lies, and why people often die when they take psychedelics, is because they take larger and larger dosages, and then they just dissolve. And I know how that feels like, and I have a set of experiences that I've also described in the book Transcendence of Life as We Know It, where I talk about this kind of stuff. And not all of them were with psychedelic substances. Most of them, where I would say that was like heavy duty, was actually without. And one thing I feel like I have to talk about is the stinging nettle. So what is oneness? Right? It's like being, feeling, or being connected with your environment. And from that, of course, it's what we say, what is empathy? I can relate to how other people feel like because I know how it feels to be them. That idea is kind of oneness. Sex is one way to experience oneness with another being, a human being. Because you can get together and then you can embrace each other. And because, the penis and the vagina, it's not just stuff like, it's not all this thrusting that people do when they have sex, right? It's not that stuff that you see in porn, where people have a camera and then they film how awesome it looks like. That's why, a woman says, I want to have a partner that fulfills me, that makes you feel whole, right? That makes you appreciate life. Because you are as one. You are one being that's raising a child. But for that you need a man and a woman. And that's why being gay is a dead end. Or transgender, it's a dead end. I mean, these people will just go. You know, they're like destined to leave. There's nothing to it. It's a hype. It's like being a hipster. It's a hype. It's something people identify with, but it's not them. Because what you are is inside of you. And if you learn to connect with that, you do experience what I would call then oneness, which is just feeling connected. Because what makes a child cry is basically the feeling of separation, because it has been separated from its mother. And what makes me cry on the inside is having been separated from nature. I mean, I'm so alienated, even me, who has spent many hours in nature, who has had experiences of like very like high magnificence, or however you want to express that, where I took psychedelics alone in nature and I felt like I was a part of nature. I mean, I remember doing mushrooms at night during a full moon, and I felt like I was at home in my living room and the ground was frozen and I was in bare feet. I mean, I can't recommend that to anyone. You know, it's not, you know, that's not like a safe thing to do. I did it, but I also know how to handle myself. I'm not a little child, you know, I don't toy around with psychedelics. I take this very serious. Because you can die from psychedelics. And not just from psychedelics, any spiritual practice that opens you up to certain things. You know, I heard Ram Dass talk about this, that there are many yogis who die in their 30s because they want to be so badly enlightened that they become that, but they don't hold it, right? The trick to being enlightened is to keep that state. Because if you lose control, you're gonna die. I mean, you're gonna leave the body. Because being enlightened, oneness means you have to rise above your everyday, I'm an animal, I'm a human, I have to eat and shit and whatever, right? You have to rise above that. That's, you know, if you know a little about chakras, I know a little about it. It's like third eye and then it's like higher wisdom, right? And when you connect with that, you know, a whole world opens up. And when that world opens up and you don't know how to ground yourself, you're just gonna take flight. You're gonna leave. Cheers, you know, goodbye. That's that. You're just gonna be dead. And maybe you can call that samadhi. But if you don't know how to return from samadhi, you know, that's like you're gone. Because samadhi is a way to somewhat leave the body. But if you have grounding, you know, it's like a thread that connects you to your body. If you don't have grounding, whoosh, just gonna be gone. And so the whole point of all these things that we're trying to do is we actually want to be in a state where we feel like we're connected. But the way I feel about it is it's becoming like the more you alienate yourself from nature, which is what gave birth to you. I mean, you are a being of nature. And when I sit in this room, it's so unnatural. You know, there's nothing is alive in here. There's no wind. There's no rustling. You know, there are no like forest spirits to talk to me. You know, all that is here is just like negative shit. And I mean that. It's like I can stuff myself full with food, you know, but nothing cleanses my soul. this place is a dead end. It's like stuck. It's stuffed with my own emotions. And so I feel like, right? So oneness is just, you feel like everything's your friend, you know, not like, doesn't mean everything has to be friendly towards you. But you know, okay, there's a dark spirit, there's a lightful spirit, right? It's just like the way it is. And that's why yogis, you know, it's like, if you have some kind of guru and you ask him, yeah, how can you say life is good with all that terror? And then he says, well, that's how it is, right? It's like darkness and light, and together it's life, right? And so oneness means you see, you know, you don't judge. You don't say this is good or this is bad. You just say, that's how it is. But you play your part. So in a certain way, in some areas, I have to judge a little just to stay true to myself. But in the end, all I need to do is actually talk about what I want to talk about. Because if I'm trying to change things on the outside too much, you know, I'm trying to control again, and then I'm in fear, and then I'll get angry because I realize I can't control it. I cannot control the state, and the state cannot control me. They can try, but right? So I don't want to live in fear, but I always fall back into it. Because when I'm alone here, I feel alone, and then I don't feel connected, and then I don't feel as one. So setting up a camera, in a sense, and speaking into a microphone and sharing it with the world gives me a feeling of, okay, you know, it's like, that's all right. You know, I can feel good about that. And I don't want to stretch this thing too long, but what I want to say about this experience I had was with the stinging nettle. And sometimes I used stinging nettles to relieve tension. So I would go into the forest. It's not really a big forest, it's just like a park. And I would look for stinging nettles that weren't like too likely to be pissed on by dogs. And then I would take some of them, and already, I mean, you have to get that into your head. To pick them without gloves is such a challenge, because I'm so afraid, because I know what these things can do. It's like a pretty intense thing. And I would take them and I would spank my entire back, right? Like my back, my calves, my neck. I would spank that with the stinging nettle. Yeah, and that stings. It's like a bit of burning. But what it actually is, it's acupuncture. It's like injecting healing energy from Mother Nature into your body. And if I would do that every day, it wouldn't sting me anymore. The only reason it stings is because I'm so tense and all the energy is blocked, like everywhere, because I'm sitting all the time. And that's why I feel disconnected, because the energy cannot rise to my higher chakras. You know, because I'm sitting all day and I'm masturbating and I'm eating so much food, I'm just stuck in my root chakra, because the energy just doesn't go any higher. And that's where I'm stuck in fear and anger and all that kind of stuff. And that basically describes the whole Western society. All of it. All of it. The whole, like, you know, science stuff, that's all fear. These people are all afraid little children. Oh, I have to understand what the world is like, so I cut open a frog. It's like, okay, you know, let's have an atom bomb or something. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. To them it does, because they live in a world of fear, so they think they have to do these things. But they're just all masochistic assholes. Just like surgeons, right? I mean, they like to cut open people. Does nobody have, like, second thoughts about that? You know, that we hail people, that we praise people who can cut open others and like it? It's like a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's just like a psychopath that gets paid for doing what he's doing. Yeah, and then he get praised for, you know, cutting away testicles and penises from young teenagers that think they have to be women now because they feel shit about being a man. Anyway, right, so oneness is like looking at the whole picture. And the experience I had that night was, I came back to my room, and now my whole back was vibrating. It's not like painful. If you do that sometimes, it does feel in a way pleasant. And it certainly does show you where you have restricted energy flow. So what happened was, I was lying in my bed, and I placed my hands, one on my chest, and one on my stomach, and was lying there. And my energy level started to vibrate. And I remember that moment where I felt like I was drifting away. No, I felt like I was losing it. I knew I couldn't hold on anymore. So in that moment, I was literally about to die. I know that because I know how it feels like to die. And that was that. But before that happened, there was I had the sensation of kind of seeing a figure, I don't know who that was, looming over me. It had like a human shape. And it felt like I received a tap on my collarbone, two taps, and suddenly I opened my eyes and I was back there. But I realized if that wouldn't have happened, I would have just died. So what happened? I don't know. Who tapped me on the collarbone? I don't know. Right? I don't know sometimes what's going on. I know that connecting with oneness or with spirit, because that's what I would call the oneness, spirit, it's like also a scary process. Because you're going to see a lot of things depending on, you don't necessarily see things. I see a lot of things, and that's what inspires most of my art, or all of it. But I also have to learn to deal with that. So you might think, whoa, awesome that he does all these images, but it's something that can literally drive you insane. To see the things that I see, to have these kind of visions, it's in a way a blessing and a curse. And the only reason I do what I do is because if I don't channel it into something, I'm gonna go mad. And so oneness isn't just about I'm incredibly high. It's also about, okay, when you're high, what do you see? What do you feel? What's the message? And in which way can you take responsibility for whatever your vision was trying to tell you? Because if you just connect to oneness to escape from feeling bad, then you don't understand anything. So taking psychedelics because you think you're going to have a good time is probably a pretty bad idea. And that's just from the realm of duality, of course. Because if I feel bad and I take psychedelics to feel better, then I also have to be prepared to put in the work to feel better. Because just taking psychedelics won't do it. They're just an aid. They're going to help you. And that's that.